Hey, I'll check out the audiobook of Lou Rockwell's Fascism versus Capitalism, narrated by me, Scott Horton, at audible.com. It's a great collection of his essays and speeches on the important tradition of liberty. From medieval history to the Ron Paul Revolution, Rockwell blasts our statist enemies, profiles our greatest libertarian heroes, and prescribes the path forward in the battle against Leviathan. Fascism versus Capitalism by Lou Rockwell for audiobook. Find it at Audible, Amazon, iTunes, or just click in the right margin of my website at scotthorton.org. All right, you guys, Scott Horton Show, scotthorton.org for the full archives, 4,300 something interviews, something like that, going back to 2003 there for you, scotthorton.org. And, of course, all the newest stuff, everything is first posted at libertarianinstitute.org/Scott Horton Show, the big, badass new Libertarian Institute. Me and Sheldon, Will Grigg, and Jared LaBelle. And by the way, three of the four of us, me, Sheldon, and Jared, will be in D.C. for the Students for Liberty Conference next month, February 17th through 19th, I think it is. So, see you there? All right, cool. Introducing Chase Madar, our old friend Chase Madar. He's a lawyer from New York City, but I like him anyway. And his whole thing is he wrote a book called The Passion of Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning. And he's got news. Hi, Chase. Welcome back to the show.
Hey. I'm delighted to be here, even more delighted than usual after yesterday's good news.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. So go ahead and break the story for the people who don't know.
Well, the big news is that President Obama is commuting Chelsea Manning's sentence. Was a 35-year sentence that was handed down in 2013, but now it's being commuted to time served plus a few more months, and Chelsea will be released from Fort Leavenworth on May 17th of this year. And this is a big surprise to me. I did not expect this kind of clemency. I would have preferred a full pardon, restitution for all the suffering that the government has inflicted on Chelsea Manning, and even the Presidential Medal of Freedom, even though that currency has been a bit debauched given all the reprobates who have been awarded that honor of late. But I still think this is wonderful news. Clemency for Chelsea Manning, the WikiLeaks source, for anyone who doesn't know. Chelsea Manning is the young soldier who, when deployed to Iraq as an Army intelligence officer, leaked to WikiLeaks thousands of field reports and war logs from the Iraq War, from the Afghan War, and then about 250,000 diplomatic cables that have given us a much more accurate and clear picture of American statecraft in the world today. And it's had a big impact. It's enriched our public debate, if not necessarily our foreign policy always. And she did a great service to the world and, above all, to the United States. We have so much to benefit from, making foreign policy decisions that are well-informed, that are not done recklessly in the dark. So I think her commutation is just wonderful, and I welcome it with open arms.
Cool. Well, so a couple of things here. Someone tweeted to me yesterday and said, why May? It seems like that just basically gives Trump enough time to reverse the decision. But can he do that? Can one executive undo a clemency granted by a previous executive? I know there's really no such thing as the rule of law at all, and they can do whatever they want. They can just send in a JSOC hit squad to shoot her 10 times if they want. But supposedly, under the rules.
My highly placed sources in the Federal Department of Justice's clemency unit say that they looked into this and they found that the answer to be no, that a president really cannot undo a commutation or a pardon issued by
a previous
president.
You asked them that, and they said that they asked that too.
Mm-hmm. So they looked at it. That's their answer. Now, you do point out that the rule of law is, it's at best a myth. And would Trump find a way around it? It's not impossible, and I will heave a big sigh of relief at the end of May 17th when Chelsea is completely released and out of prison, and that's the end of it.
Well, did they explain your sources why they didn't just go ahead and say let her go on the 19th of this month?
I wasn't able to get that question in, but the way that all the commutations that Obama has been handing down work is that there's usually an extra few months added on, often for bureaucratic reasons that I don't fully understand, but that the Federal Bureau of Prisons might be able to explain. I don't think it's a good reason. I think releasing her today or tomorrow would be much better, or Friday morning even. But that's kind of standard practice for the now couple thousand commutations that Obama has handed down. In fact, what I was really worried about was that Obama, given that he loves to split the difference, that's his style, that's what he loves more than anything, that he would commute Manning's sentence from 35 years to 10 years, which would mean 3 additional years in Fort Leavenworth. And given that Manning has attempted suicide twice in the past 12 months, it's not clear to me whether she would necessarily make it. So I welcome this as good news, even though, it would be better to just let her out immediately before the guy can screw things up.
Now, Chelsea's lawyer, I forget the name now, but I think right around a year ago was on the show and explained that she really had 7 more years to go before more or less mandatory parole, I guess is the way it worked. So when we say 35, we really mean 6 more, but still, that's a lot. And as you said, I mean, one, this is a person who's an American hero. We're going to get back to that question in a second, but this is a person who has tried to kill herself twice in the last year. And is basically, in fact, I read a statement from Chelsea Manning saying she is in desperate need of psychiatric help and can't get it in there at all. So this is really, a life-saving intervention at this point, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, given that Obama has had a absolutely dreadful record in going after leakers and whistleblowers.
He's the one who put her in there in the first place.
And he's the one who put her in there in the first place. I welcome this act of humanity from him, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. It's true that Manning would have been eligible for the military equivalent of parole. I think their term of art is good time served. In about 7 more years, it's probably David Coombs, who you were talking to, the trial lawyer. He's a great guy, a great attorney, and and I think he and Nancy Hollander and Chase Strangio of the ACLU, other lawyers who've represented Manning, deserve a great deal of credit for the hard work they've done that has paid off now. It's interesting. The military justice system is in many ways more lenient and more humane than our federal civilian justice system after all these mandatory minimums have been installed by statute. And after parole has been essentially abolished by the federal government for federal prisoners. That's counterintuitive to a lot of people. You might think the military justice system would be harsher and more stringent, but no, that's not the case.
Well, they're all government employees in on it together. It's just the same as if a cop commits a crime or a legislator or a judge commits a crime, they always get away with it. It's the rest of us. No, we are the public servants who serve them. Yeah. So whether Chelsea would have gotten this good time served and gotten out early, I think that depends on whether the military liked her or not. And the military typically is more lenient with prisoners who don't make any waves, who don't inconvenience the prison authorities in any way. Manning is not the most convenient prisoner.
She's not a convenient prisoner, no. I mean, she's been pushing hard for transgender dignity and justice as a prisoner. And the military does not love that. It makes them look bad. They've taken a few steps to accommodate her, supplying gender transition hormones, but they're not transferring her to the women's prison the way they should. So I think they'll be happy to see her back on May 17th because they're just not equipped to deal with the issues of a transgender prisoner, and they're happy to avoid that problem, I think.
All right, now you mentioned the abuse of Chelsea Manning ever since her arrest, I guess, back in 2010. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit for the people who aren't familiar with the story there, Chase?
Yes, when Chelsea Manning was apprehended by military police while deployed to Iraq, her first year in detention was in punitive isolation confinement. And there was a suicide watch for the first month that may have had some legitimacy, but after that, there was no legitimacy at all. It was just pure punishment for its own sake. And in fact, the physician who would check in with Chelsea Manning from time to time at Quantico, the Marine Corps prison, where Chelsea was confined for 11 months, kept saying, this is not medically necessary to keep this person in punitive isolation. In fact, it's bad. Take this prisoner out, and the prison authorities wouldn't listen. But what this meant is that Chelsea Manning was, in solitary confinement for a whole year, and no contact with anyone, having to check in with the guard every 15 minutes of her waking hours, who would ask, "Are you okay?" That's kind of a Chinese water torture, drip, 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 that would drive anyone crazy. And it got so bad that the United Nations felt compelled to intervene and declare that this to be inhumane treatment, which is just one half step shy of a declaration of torture. And it was particularly awful to hear Obama himself justify this treatment at a press conference, saying, "I've talked to the authorities at Quantico Brig, and they say that this is really for the prisoner's own good." In fact, to repeat, the doctor on staff there was demanding that Chelsea be released because it's, of course, very damaging to put someone in solitary confinement. And to put this in context, this is not really unique or an aberration of American criminal justice to treat something like this. We have between 70 and 100,000 prisoners in our country who are doing some kind of long-term solitary confinement. And it's no longer a tool of last resort in many prisons, but really a tool of the first or second resort, particularly in California, where they really need to figure out alternative methods of keeping order in prison without torturing people.
Yeah, well, maybe like Shane Bauer, Chelsea Manning can become a prison reform activist now after suffering this and having that level of fame. Bauer's done great with that, the results of his imprisonment in Iran there. Because, boy, what a comparison to make, Anyway. All right, so now, we're going back in time on the thing here, but I want to get back to the original leak and Chelsea Manning, and you've mentioned in context here the gender identity crisis and all of this kind of stuff. And I guess the most common narrative about Manning is, if it's not the right wing narrative is treason, but I guess the most common sort of center narrative is personality crisis. This wasn't any kind of politics or heroism or anything. This is just a person who couldn't hack it in the army, and so during some kind of breakdown gave this leak to WikiLeaks, and they kind of they starved the political motive out of the act. Chase.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. We live in a very depoliticized society, so when a whistleblower does something heroic like this, we can't understand the political motive, or I should say the mainstream media, and often much of the public just can't grip it, and they pathologize it. This is pretty common in the way whistleblowers are received, and not just in the United States. In the Soviet Union, political dissidents were often put in what's called psikushkas, which are like some Russian neologism for like psychiatric chicken coop. And because their dissent from the Soviet regime was seen as, well, it must be a mental health issue. And you had that in the United States with Daniel Ellsberg. That's why Nixon's plumbers were breaking into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. They were hoping to find dirt in the files that could pathologize Daniel Ellsberg. And here, too, very often Chelsea Manning's very political motives have been dismissed as just merely psychiatric or crazy or related to the turbulence of gender transition. I don't think that's right at all. And Chelsea Manning is very clear about her political motives in the chat logs that we have of Manning's dialogues online with a former computer hacker named Adrian Lamo, who, unknown to Chelsea Manning, was working as a federal informant and who then turned Chelsea Manning in. It's a remarkable document, these chat logs between Chelsea Manning and Adrian Lamo, and it reads like some kind of tragic 21st century one-act play. Highly recommend finding it, easily found online. I think Wired has it in its entirety. But Manning in these discussions is saying that, she wants people to see the truth about American foreign policy, because without facts, without knowledge, you can't have informed discussion and debate. And this is, by the way, coming from a soldier who made the choice to enlist in Iraq, someone who's seeing a lot of things firsthand, seeing other things, other atrocities being committed as an Army intelligence officer, seeing, for instance, that it's official U.S. policy to allow Iraqi authorities to torture suspects. And that's in direct contradiction to what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is saying back home. But no, torture is alive and well and happening, with the complicity of American occupying authorities. People don't know about this back home in the U.S., and maybe we don't want to know about it. But thanks to Chelsea Manning, we know about that and really hundreds of other incidents of abuse and violence and a full, accurate, unfiltered picture of a savage counterinsurgency war that we're waging there and in a way are continuing to wage. And I think that's a good thing. We have to face the truth about what we are doing abroad, even if it's not flattering to us.
I love Bitcoin, but there's just something incredibly satisfying about having real, fine silver in your pocket. That's why commodity discs are so neat. They're 1-ounce rounds of fine silver with a QR code on the back. Just grab your smartphone's QR reader, scan the coin, and you'll instantly get the silver spot price in Federal Reserve notes and Bitcoin. And if you donate $100 to the Scott Horton Show, he'll send you one. Learn more at facebook.com/commoditydiscs. commoditydiscs.com.
Yeah. Well, something that's really important, I think, about this story, and I forget now if this is all just detail. I think, she talks about all this with Lamo in the chat logs, that what had happened was Manning was made to participate in the torture of an innocent man who had simply written an article criticizing Nouri al-Maliki, who, by the way, now is considered to have always been a terrible, terrible choice of George W. Bush to be the prime minister of Iraq. But anyway, or president of Iraq. What had happened was this guy had written an essay in the newspaper saying, "Where's the money?" It's just exactly the kind of thing that a right-winger might write about Barack Obama's administration on the Solyndra case or something like that. And they arrested this guy, and they said, "Hey, Manning, help us process this guy. We're going to turn him over to the Bada Brigade to, presumably be tortured to death with power drills or whatever." And Manning said, "Oh, my God, I had my translator look at this, and all it is a plain old op-ed in the First Amendment kind of tradition, commanding officer, and so you've got to do something to stop this terrible arrest and abuse of this man." And the commanding officer said, "Get back to work, Manning."
Yeah,
and that was why Chelsea Manning said, "Well, screw this. If you're going to make me a torturer, then I'm going to get you, and I'm going to go ahead and reveal what's going on here to the people of the world here." And that's huge. That's not, was so sad because he wasn't a woman that he made a big leak.
It's a very honorable motive for doing what she did. And it's a motive that's been canceled out in so many media accounts of this. Not here with you, of course, but it's just a denial of the real politics. And again, that's another reason why I am delighted that Manning has clemency. Now, of course, the reasons that the Obama administration gave for issuing clemency, I don't think have anything to do with the merits of the real case. Manning issued some kind of pro forma apology during her court-martial. And fine, that's not the first or the last time someone's thrown themselves on the mercy of the court. But that's something that the Obama administration really latched onto in justifying their decision to commute Chelsea Manning's sentence. Also, unfortunately, the Obama administration is kind of bigging up Chelsea Manning at the expense of Edward Snowden, making a goofus out of Edward Snowden in order to make a gallant out of Chelsea Manning, a good leaker who faced the consequences of her action, unlike that horrid Edward Snowden. I think that's unfortunate. I think Snowden is also a great patriot who's done a great service to his country, the world. He's a really stand-up guy who was, very clear that he thought clemency for Chelsea Manning should take priority over a pardon for himself. But that's the way the Obama administration is playing it. And, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and now, so what about Assange saying, hey, if you let Manning go, I'll let myself be extradited to the USA to be prosecuted? Is he going to live up to that now? Or he's going to say, hey, clemency doesn't count as a pardon? Or what?
I would be surprised if he follows through with that. But, his calculus might have changed with Donald Trump coming in. Now that Julian Assange is a darling of Fox News and of InfoWars.
Yeah, for now.
For now, I don't see that as a long-term relationship or a very stable relationship, like so many political relationships in the U.S. right now. So, maybe he will. I would be surprised. They'll just say that.
Yeah. It's funny, man. I keep seeing on Twitter, liberals and conservatives and other people, they all say the same thing over and over again. Geez, guys, I'm losing track of when I'm supposed to like Julian Assange and when I'm supposed to be against him. Well, I always liked him. I always thought he was a little scummy, but I don't care about that, dude. He leaks and posts public or he has leaked, and he posts public documents. And if he's ruining George Bush or he's ruining Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, what difference does that make to me? The state is the enemy, everybody. Guess what? It's not just a matter of political parties. And even if you're looking for heroes in politics, it ain't Hillary and it ain't Trump. Give me a Kucinich here or Ron Paul there, maybe, but not these guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think that's funny how people really do react that way. Oh, I'm so mad at Julian Assange for publishing Hillary Clinton's emails. You really are? I mean, hell, the State Department was publishing them all at the same time, I don't know.
I know. I mean, I think liberals are just having a hard time taking any responsibility for the failure of Hillary, and they want to blame it on a foreigner, something outside the United States, whether it's Putin or whether it's Assange, rather than look at, the very real domestic politics, which I think 99 out of 100 people base their votes on anyway. But no, can't do that.
Well, I admit I didn't see it, but I was talking on the phone with Eric Garris last night from the boss at antiwar.com. And he goes, oh, my God, you should have seen it on all the cable news channels, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, just savaging Obama for this clemency. And in fact, as we were talking, there's Tapper in the background saying, this is a betrayal of everything Obama has ever claimed to stand for. This is after 8 years, they finally found something to hate Obama for, and it's letting Manning go. Can you believe that?
Well, I mean, of course, you and I have the opposite reaction. We're not saying what a horrid betrayal. We're thinking, well, this is partial redemption. Finally, maybe he's seen the error in his ways of persecuting whistleblowers.
I have a project for a college student listening to the show. Here's a paper that you could do. You find all the news stories that are not about the WikiLeaks themselves, but just news stories that cite either the State Department cables, the Iraq war logs, or the Afghan war logs as the basis for part of the reporting of the story. And in fact, do yourself a favor, confine your search to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the AP, and Reuters, and see how many hundreds of thousands of times that regular reporters doing their very mainstream job have said, actually, there's important, information to be referenced in the State Department cables that provide context here. Back in 2005, they decided that, whoever was going to have to die or whatever it is, it's in there. I mean, this is for the reporters to be leading the lynch mob against Manning, who's the source of, maybe tens of thousands of hard news stories. I mean, including release the Glaspie memos that everybody wanted since 1990,
Oh,
including, and on and on and on. including stuff from the 70s and all kinds of stuff. For them to be leading the lynch mob against this person who, again, has been in prison for 7 years, almost 7 years already, and as you say, has been abused and humiliated and driven to suicide attempts twice. And then Jake Tapper and all the rest of them, too, get up there. They just can't stand it. But what about the secrecy? You're supposed to honor the secrecy. Cry the journalists.
I mean, it's just so pathetic the way so many journalists and intellectuals in general, instead of, taking on their role, being leaders of a well-informed, robust public debate, they see themselves as little deputies, little cops for the state, and who are eager to maintain and enforce the secrecy of the state. The exact opposite of what journalists should be doing. And, I have about as much respect for that as you do.
Yeah. Well, it's really the same thing going on with the Putin scare now, too, is, little deputies. I like that. You just made yourself a new quotable there, Madar. And now, so wait, I want to go back to one thing, too, man, that I'm sorry I'm skipping around about that. But Adrian Lamo, you mentioned the rat that Manning was talking to on the chat logs, who then turned to the federal government and said, hey, let's get this guy in trouble. And how he wasn't just satisfied. I don't know if this was at the direction of the cops or not, probably. But he wasn't just satisfied to bust Manning on the leak. He tried to entrap Manning into treason and said, what you should do, Manning? You should sell these secrets to the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or something and make a bunch of money. And Manning said, no, stupid. Don't you understand? I tried to explain to you a bunch of times that that's not what I'm doing. I want the people to make good, informed, democratic decisions and all this Jeffersonian language, as you were paraphrasing earlier. But the rat tried to get Manning to commit treason. For all those who have accused Manning of treason, because that's your right-wing talking point in your email this morning or whatever it is, the rat tried to lure Manning into treason, and Manning was like, no, that's not what's going on here, man. I want, mom and pop to discuss this stuff over the kitchen table. That's what this is about, democracy. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, poor Adrian Lamo. What a scuzzy character. I think he was involuntarily committed just a month or so before he made contact with Manning. I don't think he has the real stature to be cast as an Iago-type figure in this drama. He's just too pathetic. And, he did try to entrap Manning. But at least we could see very clearly from those chat logs what Manning's motives were. Yeah. They were very pure, very
I'm glad.
Jeffersonian.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking, it's a good thing. And then I bet the FBI probably told Lamo to try it, too,
Yeah.
But, it's a good thing he did, because it just gave Manning the another opportunity to make herself, whatever, more explicit or, about the motive there. So, and for anybody who ever, repeated the talking point that, blood on their hands and all this stuff back when this happened, take a moment to stop and reflect how different the talking points are from the real reality here. Even Robert Gates admitted that no one was compromised. No spies were rolled up in any enemy state or any kind of thing like this happened at all. Not even Afghan informants whose names were published in there were later lynched or anything.
To make it clear, it was just their first names. It was like saying John or Ted or Bill. I mean, it's not very actionable intelligence that was leaked there. And throughout the very long court-martial of Chelsea Manning, the prosecution, the government, of course, had every opportunity to provide evidence of people actually being harmed. They came up with nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's not what the convictions were based on. The impact, the convictions for the various events were based purely on the formal offense. And people are still, of course, mouthing those same stale talking points of, it first went to actually having blood on his hands, to put people at risk to maybe people put people at risk of harm, this kind of double subjunctive removed from actual harm.
Yeah.
And, the same people who are going ooga booga over this hypothetical maybe harm that these leaks could have caused, these are the same people who reflexively championed the Iraq invasion, the Afghan escalation, now the longest war in U.S. history, and every other foolish war we are into. But they love pointing the finger and start gushing with sympathy when it comes to these imaginary hypothetical victims,
right,
which they can try to pin on a young soldier of conscience who actually was there, had boots on the ground, and that, of course, is Chelsea Manning.
Right. And, of course, there's no real logic behind it. I mean, if you framed it right, that, hey, here's this person is exposing Hillary Clinton, are you really saying that Hillary Clinton's horrible corruption should never be exposed if there's even a 0.01% chance of any collateral damage whatsoever coming from the reactions to the truth being made known? Mm-hmm. We already know they don't believe that. They've been the champion of WikiLeaks, leaking Hillary Clinton's secrets all for this last season. And, of course, the reason why is politics. But why is that different than in 2010 when it's Manning leaking the State Department cables on Hillary Clinton? A year worth of her reign in that position.
Well, we know that people's opinions about these things just turn on a dime depending on which party is involved, on which side of it. So,
partisanship above all.
Anyway, I think we can at least be very happy with this result. I think it was a long shot that made it. A full pardon with restitution would be better, but a commutation is something that I'm sure Chelsea Manning is very happy to accept. And so fingers crossed to May 17th. Let's hope President Donald J. Trump doesn't find a way to screw it up. I don't think he will. But at least this is some kind of partial justice. And in the sphere of leaks and whistleblowers, that's the best we've had for a long time. And it's a shot in the arm for truth tellers all over the United States. We're going to need them, of course, in the next presidential administration, just as much as we've needed them now. And, we'll see. It's good news for once. And I'm glad that a real hero of freedom, a real martyr of the Enlightenment, Chelsea Manning, will be getting freed.
Me too. And, I'm glad to just have something to celebrate on the show for a change, too. Chase, this is pretty nice, finally. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your work on this issue, for your great book. It's The Passion of Bradley Manning is what it's called, everybody. And thanks for doing the show again and being here to celebrate with us.
Hey, great talking with you as always. And as you say, for once, for good news.
Yep.
Take care, everybody.
All right, y'all. That is Chase Madar. And he is the author, again, of The Passion of Bradley Manning. And that's the Scott Horton Show. Thanks very much for listening. ScottHorton.org and LibertarianInstitute.org/Scott Horton Show for the archives there. Patronize my sponsors, please. Thanks. See ya. This part of the Scott Horton Show is sponsored by Audible.com. And right now, if you go to audibletrial.com/Scott Horton Show, you can get your first audiobook for free. Of course, I'm recommending Michael Swanson's book, The War State, The Cold War Origins of the Military-Industrial Complex and the Power Elite. Maybe you've already bought The War State in paperback, but you just can't find the time to read it. Well, now you can listen while you're out marching around. Get the free audiobook of The War State by Michael Swanson, produced by Listen and Think Audio at audibletrial.com/Scott Horton Show. Hey, Al Scott here. If you've got a band, a business, a cause, or campaign, and you need stickers to help promote, check out thebumpersticker.com at thebumpersticker.com. They digitally print with solvent ink, so you get the photo quality results of digital with the strength and durability of old-style screen printing. I'm sure glad I sold thebumpersticker.com to Rick back when. He's made a hell of a great company out of it, and there are thousands of satisfied customers who agree with me, too. Let thebumpersticker.com help you get the word out. That's thebumpersticker.com at thebumpersticker.com.